The business can be built in and around you to serve you. You shouldn't be a slave to your business. The business should serve you first. And then from that full cup that you have, your business is able to serve other people.
Casey Parram, former CMO turned solopreneur. With over 10 years investing, starting and scaling online businesses, having built an 8-figure Ecom brand, and has eventually built 2 more to 7 figures, he escaped the rat race and decided to live his life by design, not by default. Now, Casey is on a mission to help online business owners build businesses they're passionate about without overwhelm and uncertainty. Whether that's coaching via his 6-figure Soloprenuer Blueprint or serving as a fractional CMO to direct-to-customer brands, he shared the strategies, systems, and sales needed to scale, giving you the right information at the right time with specific context. No bullshit, no guru talk, just real tactics and strategy.
You can't measure the return on investment in fostering and building and nurturing those relationships because they've already lived the path and they can help you see things that aren't immediately obvious to you. If you're not willing to do something, then that's fine. You have to be willing to make up for it elsewhere.
Hey Casey, welcome to the Nomad Solopreneur Show.
Thank you, man. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Me too, because I know that you're a big football fan and you used to play football. And I'm really intrigued how you went from a potential football player to an solopreneur.
When I was younger, football was my first passion. That was just my first love. All of my time was spent playing football, like 4 or 5 times a week, before school, after school, even during school. And I'd kind of set my sole sights on becoming a footballer. That was kind of the one thing that I was aiming for. And then when I got to, it was 16, I had a lot of stuff going on at home with like my personal life, and I just entirely transparent. I just had a really bad attitude problem. So unfortunately, I was like let go from my team. And then after that, I was just kind of a bit directionless because I was like, I'd only ever imagined myself becoming a footballer. And when that wasn't a possibility anymore, I just had a bit of an identity crisis of, okay, well, what am I actually going to do now? Fortunately, I'd still kind of like prioritize education and I was able to like secure good grades. And then I'd set myself up to apply to Oxford University, which is one of the best universities in England. I'd like completed my application. And then unfortunately, I was rejected from there as well. So it was kind of the 2 career paths that I'd chosen. Both were seemingly not possibilities anymore within a very short period of time. So then I had a kind of a bit of a rebellious streak because I was just completely directionless. I knew I wanted to work hard. I was highly ambitious, but I just didn't know what to do, which is how I kind of stumbled into entrepreneurship. I actually started with an internship just through doing some like cold outreach and speaking to people who I perceived as being successful. And that's how it kind of got me into entrepreneurship as an intern. And then, since then I've had a very sporadic career in terms of like jumping around from different industries, different jobs, different roles, starting my own businesses, consulting businesses. And ultimately, that's kind of what's led me into the position that I sit now, which is a business coach and a solopreneur.
That's quite a journey. And what I like about it is that you didn't complain about the fact that you didn't achieve your dream of being a footballer. And after that, you immediately get rejected at Oxford. And that's, I think, it's one of the biggest traits of an entrepreneur, that resilience to go through this hardship and actually build something. And at what point after going through internships and trying to have a full-time job led to actually starting your own thing?
Yeah, sure. So I've actually had that transition 3 different times in my life. The first time was at an internship I was at, and I kind of came to the realization that I was, working for someone, making them a lot of money, and it wasn't kind of reciprocated my end. I was working for someone who was incredibly wealthy, and the contribution that I was making to the company at a very young age, it wasn't benefiting me in the way that I felt it was. So I made the decision to kind of leave that environment because I felt that I was worth more. And again, even at that young stage, it wasn't based on my entitlement. It was based on the fact of I had full transparency and visibility over the company and the impact I was making and ultimately how much money I was making. So that was kind of the first step. The second step was I was then in another role, and I think I just looked at if I continued down that path, where eventually that would end up and what my lifestyle would look like. And that to me didn't align with the ambition that I'd kind of set for myself. My earning potential would be capped at a certain level, and the lifestyle that I would leave didn't align with what I wanted from my life. So that kind of, it didn't feel like a heavy decision, because I was like, if I stay down this path, I know where it's going to go and it's not what I want. So I need to try something different. And I can see how people do fall into that trap of sitting in comfort, because it was easy, it was convenient, I was earning good money. If I'd continued with a short-sighted approach, the long-term me would have definitely had regrets later down the life. And that's what I was trying to avoid. And then the third most recent scenario was, again, similarly in a very good role, an executive level, very good salary. But I feel for me, there was a quote I stumbled across, and it said, the 90% of time you spend with your children is from the ages of 0 to 16. And because my son was 8, I came to the realization that half of the time I'd spent with him had already passed. And I didn't want to limit the amount of time that I was going to spend with him, 2 hours commuting per day, working 60, 70 hours a week. I was always tired. I was always burnt out. So I think the big transition for me was always just kind of sitting and thinking with intention about what I want from my life and what does it need to look like. And ultimately, if the decisions that you are making on your day-to-day basis aren't heading you in the trajectory or the direction that you want to go to, you need to make some decisions about that, because it's very clear cut. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people avoid those tough conversations because they're difficult to have. It's the analogy of mountain climbing. If you're sort of going up and then you realize halfway up that there's an easier path over there, we don't want to go back down, because the nature of time means that, we're getting older. But if that's the best path for you and ultimately it's going to get you to where you want, you just have to be willing to be brave enough to take that risk.
What question do you ask yourself in order to arrive at the realization that this is the life that I want to live? Those are the things that I want to avoid. How you think about it? Because there are so many frameworks, so many ways of doing it, but hearing from someone that went through that process, it's always enlightening, and you can actually start applying it in your own life.
I mean, there's multiple influences that kind of help me arrive at those decisions. I've always had mentors, and it's something that I've always proactively sought out. The type of environment that I grew up with, I didn't really have many role models or people who had achieved the level of ambition that I had. So I had to proactively go and seek and find those people. And that's been really good to give me context to life experiences and understand if I'm on the right path or if there are mistakes that I could potentially be making. So getting advice from people that are further ahead of you in their journey has been something that's immensely valuable. You can't measure the return on investment in fostering and building and nurturing those relationships, because they've already lived the path and they can help you see things that aren't immediately obvious to you. In terms of questions, I think understanding human behavior and human psychology and knowing that your brain isn't designed to make you happy, it's designed to keep you alive, which means that you will live every single day of your life by default, because as long as you stayed alive, it thinks that it's doing the right thing. So you're never really questioning the intentions of your behaviors because you're almost living on autopilot. For me, having that isolated time to actually sit, okay, if everything was kind of removed, what are the things that actually make me happy? And then how can I create and design a life where I'm doing as many of those things as possible? And then what that would actually look like? And then what steps I need to take to kind of make that a reality? That was the centerpiece of how I kind of gained clarity about what was important to me and how I could introduce more of that stuff into my life. So, how can I create a job or a position where I have ultimate flexibility of working hours? Sometimes I'm more than happy to work until 10 o'clock in the evening. But when I pick up my son from school, if we want to go to the park and play football for an hour, that's entirely a possibility. I'm not reliant on having to do calls or work 8-9 hours a week. So optimizing for flexibility and freedom was definitely something that was at the forefront of my mind. And as much as it was a priority before, I just didn't understand how I could make that possible until I sat and genuinely thought about it. And used all the kind of knowledge and experience I'd previously had to design the life that I want, using the skill sets that I'd acquired, as opposed to just continuing a path that I'd been doing for so many years because it felt familiar.
Yeah, definitely. And what I love about it is that you avoid as much as possible what society is telling you and avoid that status quo and start building your own life the way you want it. And when you focus on priorities, and for you was your kid, it's so much more important than anything else. And if you prioritize yourself and your family, all these other things fell into place. And we often, I was guilty of this as well. When I was planning my day, I was thinking about work tasks like projects, clients, and so on. But when I switch it to actually focusing on me, those around me, and then work, like a miracle, the work get better. I was much more productive because I was taking care of myself. I was taking care of those around me. And that way I was able to take care of my clients. And this is a huge thing that a lot of people don't see, that if you design the life that make you feel good, it's making you feel energized, and then you are able to put that energy back into your work and everything. And when it comes to work, with that flexibility that you have, and I know that you built a lot of successful e-commerce brands, and after that pivot into this new thing that you are doing now, how that process went to in order to be able to achieve this life that you design and to still deliver results for yourself and for your clients?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So what I realized, parenting and coaching, there are a lot of overlaps. And the primary one is that it forces you to recognize within yourself where you're not living in alignment. So, and a prime example of that is that I always encourage my son to, be vulnerable, take risks, and do things outside of his comfort zone. And when I wasn't doing that myself, I couldn't ignore it anymore because I felt like a hypocrite. And I was fully aware that I wasn't living in alignment because I wasn't practicing what I preached. So contextually, to understand that with how I do my coaching, it's the exact same thing. I'm speaking to people on a daily basis. And when you are continuously trying to help other people and pouring into their cups, you're highlighting your own insufficiencies and where you're probably not doing the things that you need to be doing, because you're getting that immediate two-way feedback loop of pointing it out for someone else, but also identifying, I've said that to someone else, but I recognize that I'm not doing it for myself. And the more I kind of sat with that, I was like, this is where I feel most in alignment. It's when I'm helping other people, building and scaling ecom businesses. It's been great. Like, I've loved it. I've had great experiences, great successes, and I genuinely still have an underlying passion there to build something big. But I think there is an element of you have to be slightly insane to want to start a business, because it's not easy. It requires so much like sacrifice, and it really does take out a significant chunk of your life. And, the most successful mentors that I've had, there has always been a cost to the success that they've achieved. So you have to be so intentionally passionate about what you're going to do, because it's unreasonably hard to be successful that rational people will give up. So you have to have something bigger than you that's fueling your motivation to actually achieve the success in the first place. And I realized that my passion was in and around helping people. It wasn't fashion, it wasn't clothing, it wasn't beauty, it wasn't accessories. The idea of e-commerce is great and I absolutely love it, but it's more the marketing side of things and the skills that I'd acquired that were motivating me to achieve, as opposed to now my passion is very much helping people. And that's, gaining clarity in their business and avoid the painful mistakes I had. When you're living in alignment and actually doing meaningful, purposeful work, it doesn't feel like hard work. And in terms of how that allows me to actually, design a life that I love, but also provide clients results, it comes down to systems and processes. Ultimately, there's a short window of work in which you can actually do really solid, valuable work. And when you're able to identify the high leverage activities that are going to benefit you or benefit your clients, and only do those things, and being okay with other things being messy, that's where you're able to actually really get highly concentrated outputs. As opposed to, if I look back in previous roles, I was doing a lot of things, but I could eradicate 80% of them and not much difference would have been made. It's Pareto's principle. It's the 80-20 rule. If you can identify those 20 things and really focus your time on the things that matter, that's how you're able to really ensure that you are getting the most from your time. And all it is, the more successful you become and the more competent you become, those high leverage activities ultimately mean more.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I was guilty as well at the beginning. I was trying to do everything myself because, as a solo business owner, you try to be everything. But as I mentioned quite a couple of times, being a solopreneur doesn't have to be solo. You probably don't have full-time employees and stuff, but you still can outsource things. You still let someone else do the accounting, probably even part of the work. And as you mentioned, focusing on the high leverage things, it's what sets people apart from those that are trading time for money and those that are actually running a business. And when you start to realize these things change in your life and business, and of course you end up having more free time, you end up having more time for you to think about what else can you improve, what else can you change in your business. And speaking of that, how did you find out what exactly you can help with and has the biggest output for them?
So originally I had a lot of insecurity about even calling myself a coach because, how can I tell someone how to create an 8-9 figure business when I don't personally own a 9-figure business? And there was very much that imposter syndrome, which I know a lot of people will be familiar with. But again, I love using evidence and data and stories to kind of disprove my own assumptions if they're not positive or actually serving me in a right way. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Tim Grover. He's the coach who wrote a book called Relentless Good to Great. He coached LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan. He is not the best basketball player in the world, but he has coached every single great basketball player. So in order to do the thing, you don't have to have achieved the end result. You just need to facilitate the transformation of those who are willing to learn. And it's the same with football players. Not every great football coach has been a great football player. Arsene Wenger is a great example. He wasn't a professional footballer, but he is arguably one of the greatest football coaches ever. So you don't have to have achieved the end result in order to teach or coach the end result. But I think the problem that I'd kind of encountered once I'd got over that imposter syndrome was there are so many coaches out there. Everyone's calling themselves a coach and everyone is offering advice. Like there is so much information out there. Where I was able to isolate and separate myself was to focus on solving one specific problem for one specific person. And now I just go above and beyond. So I know that everyone that I coach comes in at a similar point and they leave at an exit point, having had the transformation. I'm the person that's facilitated that because ultimately people are only really coming to me for one specific outcome. Like I could help them with a lot more things, but that's not the relationship that you enter into with a coach. You enter them for them to solve one single problem and for them to kind of shortcut the learning process as if you were going to do it by yourself. So as long as you're kind of isolated and guarded with what you do help with, what that looks like, and the actual transformation that you provide, that's the way that you're able to kind of be more fulfilled and actually feel like you are providing a more valuable service as opposed to it just entering in a relationship where someone's paying you for advice, because the advice without action is kind of meaningless and they can kind of get that advice elsewhere. Coaching is very different. Not only is it like business transformation and do you need to provide the result and the evidence of actually fulfilling some sort of transformation, it's personal transformation as well. Like you have to understand and give that advice in the context of the actual person's desires and outcomes. I start all of my coaching programs with the individual. What do they want? What are the things that they're looking to eradicate and get rid of, or the things that they're looking to do more of? If I have clarity on that, then I can optimize their business to give them that result. As opposed to if I was an agency, I would only be caring about the business. There's a business result here and my job is to fulfill that. If I was a freelancer, again, I would only care about the business. My job would be to give them some sort of result, whether that was increase revenue, improve the ROAS. Like as a coach, my job is to provide that result, but in the context of how it's going to impact the person as well.
That's a brilliant way of looking at it. And I like the fact that you focus on one thing. And I think this is something that a lot of coaches and a lot of businesses or freelancers don't do. They try to be a jack of all trade. They try to provide tips and tactics and help in so many fields. And they've fell short because you're not able to provide as much help as you think if you are knowing just a bit from everything. And of course, there are things in which you can apply that approach, but I feel you're right when it comes to coaching. Like if you can help someone to go from A to B and do that continuously for multiple individuals, then you have a valid and successful business. And speaking of that, I would love to know more, if you don't mind sharing your business model, because I feel like a lot of people can learn from it and actually start get inspired and try something different, or try to think around that model? Because we can replicate businesses, but we're not going to do it the same. But we can learn the thinking process and apply to our own thing. How yours looks like?
When I transitioned from being a CMO, I spent probably a month or so getting really clear on the business model that I was actually entering into. And again, optimizing it for the freedom that I'd previously described, and also optimizing for the outcome that I'd wanted. My previous experience, as I said, I've spent a lot of time in e-commerce, and it's such a complicated business model because you've got fulfillment, you've got delivery, you've got shipping times, you've got, actual marketing and funnels and advertising and customer service. Like, it's so complex, and there's a lot of levers in there that you have to pull to kind of make it work. When redesigning this current business model that I'm operating with, I just wanted simplicity, and I wanted to, again, optimize for freedom. So with that in mind, how I've structured it is that the coaching is orientated, again, the starting point and end point being the same for everyone. And I sort of fulfill the transition and transformation for that person. Is that if you're a freelancer or you identify as a solopreneur, coach, consultant, you will come to me having achieved some sort of success and some sort of results, but you're not in a position where it's giving you the outcome and the income that you ultimately require, and you haven't got that freedom. What that boils down to, it's a lack of three things: systems, strategies, and sales. If you're not making enough sales, then ultimately you haven't got any time or freedom or money or resources to implement strategies. Or systems is what will free up your time, and strategies is how you're actually setting a compass and a direction of where you're going to go to. So ultimately, me fulfilling that transformation in my business model looks like 6 coaching sessions, and ultimately, I'll shift that to probably a video course later down the line. But at the moment, I'm really enjoying the actual personal experience. And I want to, when I create a course, I don't want it to be something that's, got a very low completion rate and it's something that's kind of discarded. I want to have 100% certainty that it works and it covers absolutely everything. And again, I'm not using it as an opportunity to kind of flout my knowledge. I want to make sure that it's concise and actionable and going to give people the end result with my support. So what that does is that kind of creates a foundational offering for people to work with me. I then ascend people into more one-on-one support, which is, once you've kind of built out that six-figure income and what that business looks like, if you are looking to scale, there is more of a one-to-one support option with me. And then the high ticket service that I offer is the fractional CMO work. So that would be me sitting in as a chief marketing officer. And what I do is there are 2 key functions. I either save you money or I improve your revenue. The systems and frameworks that I built in and around that are obviously based off of the 10 plus years of experience I've got. But what that allows me to do is to have very clear linear inputs and outputs for myself and also for the delivery of my clients, which again, it means that they all come in at relatively similar starting points and they will leave at similar end points. And I know, depending on where they are, exactly what they need. I don't need to fill it with fluff to justify price points or overwhelm them with information. I've created a literally step-by-step process to give them the right information at the right time.
Yeah, and that timing is so important because you often accumulate a lot of information, you learn a lot, you think we are not prepared to make a step, but at the end of the day, most often than none, we are, and we just need that alignment between how much information we consume and when we start applying. And from your experience and when you coach your clients, how did you make sure is the perfect time for them to step up and try implementing something? Or if they should wait, as you mentioned it, until they build system, they actually have to make sales first. How did you balance those things and how do you find that sweet spot?
My approach is very much centered around entrepreneur first, business second. So if I know what someone is optimizing for and I know what their end goal is and what it means to them, ultimately I have to assess their situation in the context that they give it to me. And that's what allows me to deploy, does this person need systems to free up their time? For a lot of my clients, they kind of have the knowledge, but it exists in very messy parts of their brain. My job is to kind of come in, eradicate the noise, debunk all of the myths and give them a clear step-by-step process in the context of what they're actually optimizing for. So it does require that, having someone else to talk to kind of get through your ideas. But ultimately, what I'm looking for is patterns of behavior. So for some of my clients, yes, we need to focus on sales, but naturally it may be a case of they're not good at sales. They haven't got the confidence. It's not a skill set that they're willing to invest in or willing to acquire. Okay, that's great. If I know that information and they've been honest with me, we then need to factor in a sales system that doesn't require them to either do the skill that they're not willing to do, because if they're not willing to do it, they're not going to be good at it. So you're just ultimately undermining all of the hard work that you're building in beforehand. So as an example, a recent client of mine, he's not confident on sales calls and he has very little desire to improve that skill set, which for most coaches, they would be like, well, that's just what you need to do in order to be successful. But for me, again, I want to engineer the business to optimize for what you want. So, okay, I was like, that's great. I know that his target customer is busy professionals and most of his inquiries are inbound. So rather than forcing those busy people onto a sales call for 40, 45 minutes when they don't have the time, we optimize his whole funnel in and around conversations on WhatsApp. It means that people can get responses when they need to. He can send voice notes and, optimize for personalization, and the person gets to respond. What that did for his conversion rate was, he would have 20, 30 inquiries a week and maybe close 1 or 2. He's at like 8 or 9 now on average. And that's nothing else has changed. It's literally just a case of speaking to people in the way that they want to be spoken to and him optimizing for something that's playing to his strengths, as opposed to forcing him down a route where he doesn't feel comfortable and he's not willing to do what is required. And again, we've obviously improved the actual sales aspect of what happens on those interactions in WhatsApp, but he was able to achieve a result based on the information that you already had. He just wasn't aware of what that solution looked like or the step-by-step process he needed to take to actually implement that. And I think that's one good example of how the business can be built in and around you to serve you, as opposed to, I feel, what most people preach is that you just need to do what's required and it's tough. And, it's your fault if the business isn't successful. You need to upskill. You need to do this. You need to do that. And there is an element, of course, you need to sacrifice and you need to continuously get better, but you shouldn't be a slave to your business. The business should serve you first. And then from that full cup that you have, your business is able to serve other people, as opposed to your business being a drain on your time and resources. And then you have zero capacity to even do good work for your clients or create good products because you're so demoralized by the overwhelm of tasks that you have to complete and things that you don't feel competent in doing.
That's true. And that is the perfect example that everything is possible when it comes to sales, because we often think that if you want to close a deal, you just need to jump on that call and have that conversation, as you mentioned, for 40 minutes, 1 hour, whatever, to turn that lead into a client, that prospect into a client. And that's not the case. Before entering in the web development world and later on into marketing, I was doing cold calling for some companies. I was selling in person and so on. And the easiest sales that I did was either via good old Yahoo Messenger or emails, because it's, as you mentioned, you reply in their time frame, in the way they wanted to chat, not annoying them with a call or finding the right time, especially on different time zones to chat and so on. And personally, I don't do it right now. I feel very comfortable on having a one-on-one conversation on a video when it comes to sales. But I want to implement this, to be honest, into my girlfriend business, because it's a very introverted and she's a creative person. She loves her work. She does an amazing job, but she's reluctant on staying in calls with clients and having that salesly conversation and so on. So we'll implement this approach and I will let you know how it works, but I'm pretty sure it can be a great success for her as well. And you mentioned at some point some misconception. What common pitfalls do you see in those that you coach that are failing into when it comes to making that transition into actually building a freelancing business that they are willing to serve probably for a long time and not feeling drained, as you mentioned, by it? What are those common pitfalls they fall into?
There's so many. I used to think mindset was one of this wishy-washy ideas that, people sell you and it's just fluff. It's not really true. Funnily, that's one of the first principles that I actually go through with my clients now, because so many of the issues that you encounter in your business are a consequence of behaviors that you've learned that no longer serve you or are harming your business. Some examples of that will be people's inability to make decisions about who they serve. So again, even bringing it down to myself, I could help people on a much broader spectrum that I currently do, but there's no specificity in that. And it's really hard to stand out if you go for this very broad blanket approach of I help everyone or I will take on board any client, because ultimately people, especially where they become so much more competition and, solopreneurs are everywhere now. Everyone is a coach, everyone's a consultant or a service provider. People have more options than they ever have before. So they will pay for specialization. So your unwillingness to pick who it is that you serve and the discipline that you are willing to get really specialized at, yes, okay, you would isolate and lose some of the existing clients you have, but you would get better clients who are willing to pay more if you was actually very clear in who you serve and the problem that you solve. And again, it's an ingrained behavior where we feel like, oh, I'm going to have to turn down some clients or let down clients if I turn down work. And because you come from a scarcity mindset, you feel like you should never turn down work. But if it's actually going to stifle the growth of your business, you should turn down work. And that's actually the game that you play. As you get bigger and you scale, it's more important what you say no to as opposed to what you say yes to. And I found this recently, making that transition from being a CMO to a fractional CMO. I get opportunities to consult with businesses all of the time. But if they don't align with the kind of parameters that I've set out, that would be additional workload for me. And I can't guarantee the outcome because it falls outside of the parameters that I've set for myself. I have so much confidence that I can go into a business that, is doing 6 figures per month, is on Shopify, has a certain tech stack, and that I can deliver a result because I've done it time and time again. If I start to take businesses that fall outside of that, I'm less confident in my results, not because I don't think that I can achieve it, but because it requires more time and input from me. So that was probably one of the biggest obstacles, not defining who it is that you serve. I guess another one that I'll sort of refine and articulate is people's inability to be honest with themselves about what it is that they want. Again, bringing it back to the example I gave earlier, if someone is unwilling to get good at sales, you can't continuously avoid it because all you're doing is making your business suffer, and in turn you're making yourself suffer. So if you are going to set out as a solopreneur where you take all of the risk, all of the responsibility, and you have limited time and resources, you have to be very honest and transparent with yourself about what it is that you are willing to do and what you're not willing to do. And I even have to have this conversation with myself. There is a cost to me not being willing to do certain things. Like I don't want to do videos on Reels and I don't want to do videos on TikTok. That's just not who I am, and it doesn't align with who I want to be. Now, I accept that there is a cost to my business because of that. I won't grow as quickly. And, if I wanted to scale really quickly and really aggressively, absolutely, I would be posting 4 or 5 videos a day. But I don't want to do that, and I'm not willing to do that. So I have to accept that there is a cost to my business because of that. And if that is the case, I have to be willing to, subsidize and make that up elsewhere. And again, that comes from being entirely honest and transparent about what you are willing to do and what you're not willing to do. And I feel so many times my clients will come to me and, we'll have to have this conversation several times and just kind of really reiterate the same point, because what we'll do is we'll avoid the discomfort, or we'll avoid admitting that we don't know how to do something, or avoid admitting that we don't want to do something, because then it begs the question, how badly do you want to win? How badly do you actually want to succeed if you're not willing to do what it takes? And I understand that approach, and, it's definitely an element of what's required to be successful. But I guess the view that I take, which is different from most other people, is if you're not willing to do something, then that's fine. You have to be willing to make up for it elsewhere. And what that looks like in the context of your business will ultimately determine the level of success that you achieve.
I love the way you put it. When you manage to get that clarity, get that honesty, and have the right guidance, you have basically a shortcut to success. And that success can be anything that means to you. It doesn't have to be like 8 figures or 7 figures, or it can be more free time with your son as you do. And that's the thing, like focusing on the things that matter to us and designing that life is just so underrated nowadays. And speaking of this, if someone wants to get in touch to work with you and get help designing the life they want, where they can reach out?
I'm most active on LinkedIn. That's the biggest platform for me at the minute. So yeah, definitely hit me up on LinkedIn. I post on there pretty much every single day. Aside from that, if you are interested in any of the services I offer, just go to offers.caseyparram.com and you can find out all of the ways that you could work with me.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And I'll put as well the links in the show notes. And to wrap things up, I'd like you to create a challenge for those listening to start doing something in less than 24 hours that makes the foundation for building a life by design, not by choice, and what they can do in just one day to do so.
So it's actually one of the challenges that I set for my clients. It's called building a happiness buffet. So what I want you to do is take a pen and paper and for 15 minutes, write down a list of things that make you happy. And they have to be small but specific tasks or activities. So for me, that would look like, football with my son, or driving and listening to music that I enjoy, or baking. So 15 minutes, write down a list of those activities. And then once you've completed that, I want you to sit and work out how you can factor in as many of those activities into your day and work as possible. You'll see very quickly how on a daily basis, the absence of these things is actually making it difficult for you to be happy. Whereas if you just simply do more of those things, it's actually really easy to be happy. And that's the foundation of having kind of an intentional life. Like, you just want to make it really difficult to be unhappy and easier to be happy. If you do that from your personal perspective, it's a great starting point. If you want to start to integrate it into your career, do the exact same thing, but those tasks and activities need to be specific to your job. So 15 minutes, continuously write down the parts of your job that you really enjoy and the things that you want to do. Again, work out what that looks like in your career.
That's a beautiful challenge. And I think it's one of the best, to be honest, that we had in the show. Is we often avoid this conversation with ourselves, like, what I actually enjoy doing, what makes me happy, what makes me wake up in the morning and say, oh my God, another amazing day, another joyful day, and not just, oh no, like I have to go to work again, I have to do that and feel drained from the 5 minutes after you wake up. Is not the way life should be lived. And having that clarity on the things that you enjoy doing, that's a perfect place to start. Thank you so much, Casey, for sharing that.
No, honestly, I've really enjoyed this. It's genuinely been one of my favorite conversations. So yeah, I hope the listeners found some value.
Personally too, and I'm 100% sure they will, because that's the thing, like when we start creating our own life, not depending on others telling us what to do, that's a life worth living. Enjoy the conversation as well, and thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening, everybody. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to subscribe to your favorite podcast station to not miss when we drop the next one. We have lots of exciting guests and surprises for you coming up. This is your host, Gabe Marushka, with the Nomad Solopreneur Show. Until next week, pura vida!